In the untamed twilight of the American frontier, where fortunes were forged in dust and blood and lost on the turn of a card, the greatest heist of the 19th century wasn't pulled off with a loaded Colt 45, a galloping getaway horse, or a gang of masked outlaws. It was executed with a simple, dirty leather bag of uncut stones and an audacious lie that brought the wealthiest, most powerful men in America to their knees. It was the winter of 1870, and the fever dream of the California gold rush was beginning to fade. The easy gold had been panned out, the surface silver was gone, and the prospectors who had flocked to the West with dreams of empire were leaving with empty pockets and broken spirits. The nation was hungry for a new miracle, a new source of limitless wealth. Into this desperate, glittering void walked two men who looked like they hadn't 2 cents to rub together, Philip Arnold and John Slack. They were a pair of weathered, uneducated cousins from Kentucky, their faces mapped with the deep wrinkles of the brutal desert sun, and their clothes caked in the pale dust of the American wilderness. On a foggy San Francisco afternoon, they quietly walked into the Bank of California, the financial beating heart of the West Coast. They didn't ask for a loan. They didn't ask to open an account. They simply approached the teller, their eyes darting around with paranoid urgency, and asked to store a heavy, soil-stained sack in the bank's secure vault. When the teller, annoyed by their ragged appearance, asked what was inside that required such heavy security, Arnold hesitated. With trembling hands, he untied the leather drawstrings and tipped the contents onto the mahogany counter. Out spilled a cascade of raw, uncut diamonds, rubies, emeralds, and sapphires. They caught the dim gaslight of the bank, glittering with the promise of unimaginable wealth. The teller gasped. Word traveled fast, and within minutes, William Ralston, the founder of the bank and the most powerful financier in the West, was standing over the stones. Ralston was a man who had built empires on mining speculation, but he had never seen anything like this. North America was not known to possess diamond fields. If what these two simpletons had found was real, it would dwarf the gold rush entirely. Ralston immediately ushered the cousins into his private office. Arnold and Slack played their parts perfectly. They were cagey, terrified, and seemingly ignorant of the true value of what they possessed. They claimed they had stumbled upon an entire mesa in a remote, uncharted territory of the Indian country, where the ground was literally carpeted with precious gems. You could kick the dirt, they swore, and turn up a fortune. Ralston, blinded by the sheer scale of the potential profit, demanded a stake. The prospectors reluctantly agreed to sell a portion of their claim, but only if they were given $100,000 in cash to secure their families, and only if the location remained an absolute secret until a proper mining corporation could be established. Ralston, cautious but ravenous for the monopoly, demanded proof. He insisted that the stones be appraised by the most reputable jeweler in the world. So Arnold and Slack left a sample of the gems, and Ralston shipped them to New York City to be examined by none other than Charles Tiffany, the founder of Tiffany & Co., and the legendary politician Horace Greeley. In a velvet-lined room in Manhattan, surrounded by the elite of American society, Charles Tiffany adjusted his jeweler's loupe and examined the rough stones. The room held its breath. Finally, Tiffany looked up, his eyes wide. He declared the stones to be of immense value, estimating the handful alone to be worth over $150,000. He pronounced the discovery the most astonishing in the history of the world. With Tiffany's blessing, the frenzy truly began. Ralston quickly assembled a syndicate of America's wealthiest titans, including Civil War General George B. McClellan and the Baron of the Rothschild banking empire. They formed the New York and San Francisco Mining and Commercial Company, capitalized with an astonishing $10 million. But before they handed over the final massive payout to Arnold and Slack, the investors demanded one last concession. A trusted mining engineer must see the fields with his own eyes. The cousins agreed, but on one bizarre condition. The engineer had to be blindfolded for the final leg of the journey so he could never reveal the location. The syndicate chose Henry Janin, the most respected and incorruptible mining consultant in America. In the summer of 1872, Janin, along with Arnold, Slack, and a few high-ranking investors, boarded a train heading deep into the vast American interior. Disembarking at a desolate station in the Wyoming territory, the investors and the engineer were blindfolded and led on horseback for days through brutal, winding terrain to disorient them. When the blindfolds were finally removed, they found themselves standing on a barren, sun-baked mesa. Arnold handed Janin a shovel. Within minutes of digging into the hard earth, he hit something hard. It was a diamond. A few feet away, an investor kicked a shimmering stone, a ruby. The men fell to their knees in the dirt, weeping and laughing as they clawed at the ground with their bare hands, pulling up handfuls of precious gems. Janin, completely overwhelmed by the undeniable physical evidence, officially certified the field. He estimated that a massive crew could extract millions of dollars of diamonds a month. The investors returned to San Francisco in triumph, immediately paying Arnold and Slack nearly $600,000 in cash, an astronomical fortune at the time. The cousins quietly took their money, packed their bags, and faded away into the frontier. But there was a fatal flaw in the perfect crime, and it came in the form of a brilliant 30-year-old government geologist named Clarence King. King was leading the 40th Parallel Survey, systematically mapping the harsh, uncharted topography of the American West. When the news of the spectacular diamond discovery broke, King was immediately suspicious. He knew the geology of the continent better than any man alive. He knew the age of the rocks, the tectonic history, and the mineral composition of the dirt. And he knew with absolute scientific certainty that diamonds, rubies, and emeralds simply do not form in the same geological environment. Diamonds require deep volcanic pipes, while emeralds form in hydrothermal veins. To find them sitting side by side in the dirt of a Wyoming mesa defied the laws of nature. King realized that either everything he knew about geology was wrong, or the greatest financial titans in America were the victims of an unprecedented swindle. Using a few clues dropped by Janin about the train route, the weather, and the general topography he saw before being blindfolded, King and his team mathematically triangulated the likely location of the mesa. In November 1872, they set out into the freezing Wyoming wilderness to find the impossible. After weeks of brutal searching, they finally spotted a mesa matching Janin's description. King climbed to the top and immediately saw the disturbed earth where the investors had dug. He got down on his hands and knees. Within minutes, he found a diamond, then a ruby. But King didn't cheer. He brought out his magnifying glass. As he examined the rough diamond, he noticed something impossible. It had a tiny, perfectly flat, polished facet. He moved to another hole and found a sapphire. Digging deeper beneath it, he found nothing. The gems were only located in the top few inches of the soil, placed in a precise, unnatural grid pattern. But the final, damning piece of evidence came when King found a partially cut gem that still bore the faint, microscopic tool marks of a European jeweler's lapidary wheel. The terrifying, brilliant truth washed over him. The entire mesa had been salted. Arnold and Slack had never discovered a diamond mine. Instead, they had taken the initial $100,000 Ralston gave them, sailed to London and Amsterdam, and quietly purchased thousands of cheap, low-grade industrial diamonds, flawed rubies, and worthless gemstone scraps. They had smuggled them back into the United States, ridden out to this remote mesa in Wyoming, and literally planted the gems in the dirt like seeds in a garden. They had fooled the sharpest bankers in the West, the greatest jeweler in New York, and the most respected mining engineer in the country, simply by exploiting their blind, insatiable greed. King rode out of the wilderness as fast as his horse could carry him, racing against time to reach the telegraph office before the mining company went public and ruined thousands of everyday investors. When King's devastating report hit San Francisco, it hit with the force of an earthquake. The frenzy collapsed overnight. William Ralston, humiliated and facing the total destruction of his reputation, was forced to personally refund the millions of dollars to the furious investors out of his own pocket. Charles Tiffany's pristine reputation as an infallible gemologist took a massive, embarrassing blow. As for the masterminds, John Slack vanished entirely, swallowed by the vastness of the American West, never to be seen or heard from again. Philip Arnold, however, casually retreated to his home state of Kentucky, purchased a massive estate, and lived like a king. When the furious investors tried to sue him, Arnold simply smiled, hired the best lawyers his stolen money could buy, and claimed that he was just a simple prospector who had been as surprised by the gems as anyone else. Without hard proof that he planted the stones, he settled out of court for a fraction of what he stole, keeping the vast majority of his fortune. The Great Diamond Hoax became a legend of the frontier, a chilling, brilliant reminder that in the relentless pursuit of wealth, even the smartest men can be blinded by the sparkle of a stone, and that the greatest weapon in the world is not a gun, but a story people desperately want to believe.